Welcome to the channel, Annie Collins here. Today we'll be creating this fun card. Let's go with the products I used to create this card. We're going to use the Condo Dwellers, which is FHS060, and the Fairy Condo, which is FHS059. These little dwellers, or little fairies, are a perfect size to go with this mushroom. We'll be using VersaColor in Nocturne, and Memento, and Rich Cocoa, VersaColor in Cardinal, and Delicata in Ruby Red. I have a leftover panel which has distressed oxide and tumbled glass that in a little Salvage Patina from a previous project. I'm going to use that for our background. Layering cardstock in Ruby Red, and an A2 110-pound card base. We'll be using our Memento markers to color in our little houses and the little tops of our houses, the little roofs. They're made out of leaves and florals. So we'll be using Rosebud, Morocco, Peanut Brittle, and Pear Tart. Later on, I'll bring in a Cottage Ivy to add to our card. So let's start with our project. I put on my panel and my stamping platform here, and I'm going to bring in the Fairy Condo, and I'm going to center this on my card panel. And I realize it's lifting up so much because it's from a previous project, so I add a little bit of washi tape to my corners. Now I'm going to take the Rich Cocoa, and I'm only putting it in the fins or the bottom of the mushroom and its stem, trying to keep as much off of the mushroom cap. If a little bit gets on there, I'm not worried about it, but I'm just trying to keep it as minimal as possible. Now I'm going to bring in my VersaFine Clair in Nocturne to do our houses, and then I will stamp the top of our mushroom with both the VersaColor in Cardinal and the Delicata and Ruby Red, creating a tone-on-tone red design here. And the Delicata gives it a nice little shimmer as well. Very subtle. Excuse me. So making sure that it's nice and stamped and even, and then you have it. I have a little bit of that brown in there that went into my cap, but that's fine because it's towards the bottom. Right, so now I'm going to bring in VersaFine Clair again in the Nocturne, and I'm going to stamp my fairies. I'm going to use this with a stamping block because that way I can make sure I get them exactly where I want. I'm going to ink them up and start placing them onto my card. I stamp off just to make sure that I like how it looks, and then I'm going to go ahead and stamp one fairy on each side flying up, two in the center, and one right in the middle of our mushroom. These are so cute because they're so tiny, and it does look like they're flying up to their homes. I'm going to put this little one right here. And then there's another one facing to the right, and I'll be putting that on the left side. And then one in the center there because my ink didn't quite cover all of it. So I have a little boo-boo, but that's the perfect way to hide it, is behind one of our fairies. Since this is watercolor paper left over from another project, it kind of is a little warped. Alright, so now that we have our fairies on there and I heat set our ink so that it wouldn't smudge, I'm going to go ahead and start coloring in our mushroom and little houses. I'm using the peanut brittle color here to fill in any highlights within our mushroom, because if not, it'll look blue because the background is all blue. So I'm adding that to the fins area as well as our stem, and we'll use this again to color our houses. Just make sure I get all those little highlights, and now it looks nice and two-toned. So now for the top of the roof of this little house, which is mostly leaves, I'm going to use the Pear Tart and just color in all the little leaves. I'm going to go ahead and add Pear Tart to this one towards the bottom, because the top looks like a little morning glory kind of, and I'm going to use the rose bud on that. So this one will have a two-tone roof, which is the pink and a little bit of green, and the center one will have the green portion towards the top, because it looks almost like a mum or a daisy, a Gerber daisy, put upside down. So I'm going to go ahead and put some of that Morocco, which is almost an orangey color, excuse me, onto the rest of the leaves on the bottom, or petals I should say. Alright, so now our houses, I'm going to bring in the peanut brittle once again to fill in the little houses here, making them all look like little wood, made out of wood. This is really easy, and since the VersaFine Clair is a pigment ink here, I'm using these water-based markers to color it in, and it won't smear. Almost done with our last house here, and this goes pretty quick. Alright, so now our houses are all done. Our card front is just about done, but I realized that my little white dots on my mushrooms look more blue. So I'm going to bring in my Jelly Roll pen size 10 in white, and I'm going to fill those little white dots in, and add a few extras here and there as well. On the bigger ones, I'm just going to trace around and add some white to them right here. You'll see that I'll trace around any of the bigger spots that are in it, and then just color it in with the white, just to brighten it up. Of course, this is totally optional. You do not have to make this part, but like I said, since the background is completely blue or light blue, I wanted to add a little more white to pop it. And I figured a few extra dots will not hurt it at all. Okay, so now we're done with that. I'm going to go ahead and bring in my Jelly Roll pen in gold, a metallic gold, to fill in the little chain, or it's like a little chain design. It looks like they're hanging the little houses off the mushroom. So I'm going to fill in those little dots with the gold, and as well as the windows and the doorknobs. So on the windows, it gives it a nice little glow as if the lights are on, and of course the doorknobs will just accent it. And it also brings that gold a little further down our card. And this should be the last one here. Okay, so now our fairies look a little plain, but I'll fix that in a second. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and bring in my Winked Stella in clear and just touch the fairies' wings with it. Not the entire fairy, just their wings. Just to give that a little shimmer, because you have a slight shimmer on the top from the Delicata red, in ruby red on the mushroom cap. Then you have the gold trickling down, so I wanted to add a little more. So now I trimmed down my panel, and I realized my mushroom looks like he's floating in the air. So to ground it, I'm going to bring in the Pear Tart marker. I'm just flicking up some little lines to create some grass, and I also bring in my marker in Cottage Ivy, also to create some grass. So you have two-tone colored grass here, the lighter and the darker. So now our mushroom looks grounded. Let me wipe my space here before I get green ink on everything. I'm going to use some Barely Arts glue to adhere our card panel to our layering cardstock. And I'm being generous with it because this is, like I said, watercolor paper that I did, ink up and then heat set, so it's a little warped. I'm gonna flip it over and make sure I press really well to make sure we have a good firm adhesion to our panel. Alright, so now we're going to adhere this panel to our card base. Get that all lined up and and adhere to our card. Again, I flip it over to make sure it's nice and firm. And then the last final thing we're going to do is add some finishing touches with some rhinestones or gems. Bring those in, decide where I want to place them. Excuse me. I put one here to the left, then I decided to put one right onto the mushroom to kind of lighten that area up there. Two to the right, and then one up towards the top. This is me thinking, should I add more? And I decided, yep, one more right here. And that gives us a nice odd amount, which is easier to read for the eyes. And then I'm going to adhere those into place. So I have a ruby one and two lighter cream ones and a blue one. Or greeny, it's like a greeny blue, like a tealy blue. And one is a pink, the one towards the top. Alright, so I'm going to add some Barely Arts glue here and adhere my gems. And our card is done. I'm leaving this without a sentiment, so it could be a just because, or it could be any, for any reason. Alright, so I'll have, again, everything in the description box below, but let's go over what I use. VersaFine, Clair, and Nocturne, VersaColor and Cardinal, Delicata and Ruby Red, Memento and Rich Cocoa, our gel pens in white and gold, our Memento markers, Wink of Stella, and Barely Arts glue. We used the Fairy Condos, the Fairy Dweller stamps from Fairy, and our card is now complete. Again, I'll have everything listed in the description box below for you. Thank you for being here, and I hope you found some inspiration.